Hey, what is up, everybody? And thank you for listening to Operation Agency Freedom, where we are bringing you top secret advice from the world's most badass digital agency owners. These amazing men and women are sharing their stories of how they have built 6, 7, and 8-figure digital agencies and how you can too. Of course, you know me. My name is Chris Martinez. I am the CEO of Dude, where we help digital agencies by giving them the people and the processes and the education so that they can take on more projects and scale profitably. And on this episode, I'm really excited because we're sharing with you Kasim Aslam. He's the founder and CEO of Solutions 8. You have probably seen him speaking on many, many stages. He basically runs a Google Ads agency. And I really, really love this interview with him because he shares specifically his processes that he uses today running a, multi seven figure agency. But it wasn't always like this for him. He was kind of like this broke, and I'm talking like broke, jack of all trades agency, trying to make money any way he can, not specializing in anything. And so he shares his processes of how he went from that to now the number one Google Ads agency on the planet. And super funny guy, really, really good interviewer. And I just by talking to him, like you wouldn't necessarily think that he was great at process, but you know, don't let the cover fool you. Like this guy is really, really sharp, and he's built a great agency. So excited to share his story and his tips. I guarantee that you'll be able to get a lot of his expertise, pull it out, and use it for yourself. So let's jump right into that interview. I hope you enjoy it. What's up, Kasim? How you doing today, man?
Living the dream. How you doing, Chris?
Doing very well. And you told me earlier that you're calling out of Scottsdale, Arizona. So very lovely town. I spent a couple of days there recently. I say recently as in the past 2 years. Let's just not count 2020. That year just didn't really happen.
I'm just gonna opt out of that one.
Yeah, exactly. So, we start off every show with our roundtable discussion, which I'm very, very excited to hear about this topic because you are a distant relative of Thomas Jefferson
Yep.
on your mom's side. And you also mentioned that he is actually your least favorite president. So, first, tell us about the relation to Thomas Jefferson and how you even learned that. And then I would love to hear why that's one of your least favorite presidents.
Yeah, well, I'd say he's one of my least favorite founding fathers.
Founding fathers. Okay.
Yeah, the presidential pool is so large that I don't know that I'd go that far. But my father's Pakistani immigrant, came here when he's 19. My mother's white, and she's like hardcore, like Southern Baptist. My family, we fought for the wrong side in the Civil War, if there is such a thing. But I mean, good folks. Everybody played college football. All my uncles went into the military. My uncle Dave was a fighter pilot, like hardcore Americans. And I was doing a genealogy study just on my own, and I found I tracked our line all the way to the 1600s. So my mother's maiden name is Caraway, and the Caraways came over as indentured servants from Ireland. They were English, brought to Ireland because at the time people were trying to breed out the Irish, and that's what they were doing. So it was kind of a messed up situation.
Yeah.
And then they came to the States, and what was cool about it is I tracked my great to the eighth grandmother's a woman named Elizabeth Ann Kemp. And Elizabeth Ann Kemp is Thomas Jefferson's first cousin. They shared a grandfather whose name was also Thomas Jefferson, is Thomas Jefferson's namesake. And so Thomas Jefferson's like my great to the eighth grandmother's cousin. So he's like a whatever. But what's funny about it is we've been watching Hamilton. My wife loves that show, and we watch it with my kids.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So
that
every
musical.
time you see Thomas Jefferson, my wife tells my boys, "Oh, that's your uncle. He's like a great uncle." And it just occurred to me that my boy Ronan, my youngest, like really gets a kick at it because anytime David Diggs is on stage, he's like, "Oh, that's our uncle." But what I realize is my son thinks that Thomas Jefferson looks just like David Diggs, and I've decided I'm not going to correct him. I'm just going to let him go through life. It feels almost like poetic justice because Thomas Jefferson was such a piece of, like, when you look, and he was hedging his bets, and everybody thinks that he wasn't even really in the fight. Like, and there's just some things that he did that you look back on and you're like, wow, that's and then there's all the slavery and the rape. So
yeah, that is very, very interesting. And that's one of the things that is, I don't think it's unique to American culture, kind of like the focus on the positives or like over romanticizing the positives about some of these people. Like
Yep.
these were real people. They had real flaws. which is one of the things why I love the musical Hamilton, because it really talks about a lot of Hamilton's flaws. I don't know if it covers all of them because I haven't done as much research as you. But yeah, like when did you kind of come to this realization that Thomas Jefferson was not really somebody that you admired that much?
Well, it's funny because I developed that opinion. My American history is my favorite subject. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
have a copy of the Constitution in my backpack. I'm like hardcore. Dude,
Wow.
it's weird. It gets a little creepy if I talk to you about how much I love this country. So I'm a really big fan of most of the people that kind of helped build it along the way. And I do think that there needs to be a level of forgiveness. Just if you look at like the historical paradigm from a moral perspective, there's just different things that we have to be conscientious of. That
Yes.
said, some of the folks were they were pieces of junk for their time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there are people that like, hey, if you and I were there, chances are we would have owned slaves if we were in that socioeconomic bracket. That is a statistical fact.
Yeah.
So I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying that's like people are sheep and that's what they did. But then there were people that within the confines of their own moral grounds, like lowered the bar, and I feel like TJ, and dude, he did some amazing stuff. He basically wrote the Constitution, you know what I mean? Like really,
Yeah.
really brilliant cat, but also like very morally ambiguous. And so it was something of poetic justice, I guess, in reverse, because I already knew I didn't like the cat. And then I found out I was related to him. And it makes me wonder, like, had I found that out first, maybe I would have had like a revised opinion.
Yeah. Maybe that's how it'll be with me and OJ Simpson, because I hate OJ Simpson probably more than most people do.
Yeah.
Um,
Why?
his trial, like I was just talking about this the other day. Like when I look at some of the turning points in that caused me to lose some faith in the American justice system, I was 14. No, I was 15 years old when the verdict came in. I was 14 years old when they caught him. And I was just, and I'm from LA, so I just saw the whole thing happening. I remember my 8th grade graduation, the day after my 8th grade graduation. One of my friends' moms had rented a hotel room so that we could party in it at 14 years old.
That's awesome.
And they interrupted the Laker game because of the OJ Simpson case. It was the Lakers were, I think they were in the finals. Or for the not the case, but the car chase where he was in the white Bronco. And
Yep.
so we sat there and we watched that. I remember that at 14 years old. And I just was like following the trial as a teenager. I'm like, this guy is guiltier than guilty. And then he gets off. And I was like, you know, this is a mess. Like our justice system is so fucked. And so now maybe based on that, now I'm somehow related to OJ Simpson.
Dude, isn't it funny how stuff like that like makes an impact on you though? Like it's super like a small obscure event, but for whatever reason, it just stays with you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, a lot of the way that we perceive the world today is based on our experiences. I'm not the first person to say that. So it's not like I'm intelligent because I just mentioned that, but like we all have these unique experiences and we draw on those experiences to shape our understanding of the world and also to kind of categorize things that we see. Like, we make sense of things based on the experiences that we had in the past. Oh, that person did that to me because they are so and so, or because that happened to them, right? And they might not be interrelated at all, but that's just the way that our little human brains have to make sense of the world.
Yeah, there's a quote that I love. It was falsely attributed to Sojourner Truth. I don't know who actually said it, but the quote was, "We're all victims of our own experiences. Nobody can eliminate prejudice, only recognize it."
Yeah, that's a
And
great quote.
every little thing that happens to you kind of builds kind of it's a little grain of sand of prejudice in your mind.
Yeah,
And if
absolutely.
you spend some time meditating on that, it kind of helps you relate to other people in a way that might be more equitable,
Yep.
because otherwise it's just so easy to jump to conclusions, man. And we do it all the time.
Yep.
People don't admit it, but we do it all the time. So yeah.
Dude, we can go down this rabbit hole forever. I do want to talk about the agency stuff. So,
Yeah.
you're a smart guy. You're a funny guy. You don't, like most of us, we didn't set out looking to run a digital agency, but you've had a lot of success. And I've seen you've gotten on some big stages and stuff. So really quickly, like, tell us about your agency. And then I know that, you have some process knowledge that has really helped you to grow. So we'll jump into that, after you kind of give us your elevator pitch and the brief history of how you got started in this business.
Yeah, I own an agency called Solutions 8, SOL8.com. We're the greatest Google Ads agency on the planet, and I have data to support that assertion.
Nice.
I've got 30 employees, 150 some odd clients. We're a little bit bigger than your average agency, but smaller than the ivory tower folks.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that we're big enough to make a difference, but small enough to care. didn't set out to start an agency at all. The quick version of my catastrophe was I owned a software development firm. I was building software applications for banks. One of my biggest clients was the largest privately held bank in the nation. They were also the largest bank failure in U.S. history. And I was in the bank on Bank Failure Friday when the FDIC came in and kicked down doors and took everybody's computers, and that event kind of catalyzed what was, and I think every entrepreneur probably goes through this, but like the destruction of my business. Like I had to lay off everybody that worked for me in a day.
How many people was that at the time?
It was hard to, I had an offshore office in Pakistan that had about 20 developers, but they weren't all mine. It was kind of like one of those, dude, a lot like what you do with Dude. Like I was kind of like leasing these people, but they relied on me, like they were my, so I had 2 or 3 people here, like 2.5, let's say, 2 full-time, 1 part-time. When I was young, I was 21 when all this happened. And I'd been making way more money than a 21-year-old kid should make. So I was so leveraged. You know what I mean? I had the house on the hill and I had the car, and then very quickly learned like, oh, these aren't mine at all. These are the bank's.
Yeah.
And the bank reminded me of that as they took it. So I ended up, it was pathetic. I ended up moving into this apartment building because they gave 3 months free. I had $150 that I borrowed from my dad. And my dad at the time was hurting too. And he was like, dude, this is like as much as I can do. And I'm in the apartment building, soaking in gasoline, lighting matches, like just no idea what to do with life. I remember going to Costco on the weekends with an expired Costco card, and I was eating like the free tryouts. Like that's how I would eat lunch. Rock bottom. So not to depress everybody on the call.
Oh, this is good. I can relate to this. Like,
so, but what's interesting is, and I couldn't build software anymore because I'm not actually a coder. I was just the intermediary. I know enough to like talk my way into the conversation, but then I would outsource it. And the way software generally is built is you get a small, 5 to 10% up front. The rest of it's on delivery. And these are 12, 18-month builds.
Yeah.
And, my credit's shot, so I can't float that. So I started trolling Craigslist for like just web work.
Mm-hmm.
And that even depressed me more because you're like doing something for $50 on this gal's website and she's still using Flash and whatever. But what's funny about it is it led to digital marketing. It led to people like, what, how do I get found? And so I started my career in SEO, which I still love with a passion, but it's not a scalable service in my soft opinion. Mm-hmm. And so, that kind of, Solutions 8 became this Me Too agency. We're called Solutions 8 because we did everything for everybody. We had 8 core offerings. and my big advice to every agency out there, and you're going to hear this from everybody and you're going to be repelled by it. And then years later, you're going to do what I did and finally take the advice and thank goodness that you did. You have to niche down.
Yeah. You
have to niche down, because if you don't, you're always going to be everything to everybody. I was actually making really good money as an everything to everybody agency. But it was the worst time of my life. I hit this financial threshold where I was like, well, I should be happy. I should feel successful. But anytime my phone rang, I'd get this knot in my stomach because I was like, I don't know who's going to call. I don't know what problem they're having. I don't know how to deal with it. So when we started to niche down, that's when life really began to, and dude, that's when scale hit and we got really successful and known.
How many years were you the, do everything agency before you kind of had that epiphany and said, okay, I got to make a change?
It was a long time. And what's interesting, it was probably 5 years.
5 years of just,
yeah,
struggling and taking everything that you can get. And
we're doing like video production, app developments, SEO, content marketing, social media, like things that you need to know a lot about. You have to be like really, and I had the staff. So I had a green screen studio. I had a full-time videographer, 2 editors. Like I had the staff to support it, but it's even so, it's hard when, it's a hierarchical structure, any business. And if the dude at the top can't be ultra proficient in one of these things, or at least build the ecosystem that allows for, middle management to do that, which isn't possible in a small business, it just makes it hard, makes it difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was Jason Swank who told me this. He said, like, when you do that, you essentially have 8 different businesses, right? And 100%. You need like 8 different CEOs and 8 different teams. It's very, very true. In terms of like revenue, how big did you guys get?
We breached 7 figures and then contracted for, it was by intention. I started making less money because I had to bring on, like you said, 8 different CEOs. I kept having to bring on these resources and then what's worse is I couldn't keep them busy because I'd go sell video production. And then I brought in this guy who was brilliant. He'd done work for Kobe Bryant, Snoop Dogg, like really, really brilliant cat, but he was super expensive. And I had enough video work to, the type of video work we had justified that type of resource, but the amount didn't. And now I'm like, okay, now I have to go sell video. But then I took my eye off the ball for SEO or for web dev or for whatever. And so, I kept bouncing back and forth. And then I ended up buying my business partner out and we fired clients and I let go of some, she liked to hire people because she liked to hire people. I think we've all had folks like, you know what I mean? She's like, I like you. She went to a restaurant once and hired the waitress. Um, Not kidding, dude. Like just kind of an interesting thing. So bought her out. Hope she never sees this interview. And then I scaled down and I didn't niche down at that point, but I got hyper focused on high value clients. So I was going after the big retainers.
Good.
And then I
Yeah.
brought in a business partner. And dude, that's one of the best things I've ever done for myself is I knew this dude. He was a client of mine for a long time. His business went belly up because of a bad investor. And I stalked him for like 6 months, Chris. I was like, hey, bro, what are you doing? Like, you know, what's going on? And I finally got him to come work with me. And he's the one that identified, he's like, everybody that's successful with us long term is successful in Google Ads first. So we didn't even mean to become a Google Ads agency. Our intention in the beginning was just run Google Ads to identify, like, because Google Ads is the Coliseum, right? It's like, let's take all the businesses, throw them in the middle, have them duke it out, and we'll see who wins. Because if you win at Google Ads, it means that you have a great value proposition, good pricing. It means you can actually close the deal and deliver on it, et cetera, et cetera. So we just wanted to use Google as like the litmus test, and then we would sell them all the other stuff. Well, we got so good at Google that over time the other stuff became kind of a distraction. So we just kept niching down and niching down. So it was a slow, painful move. But when you know, now that we're on the other end of it, I'm just so grateful for it.
That's awesome. So, one key thing that I don't know if you recognize this is that most agencies, at least from what I see, most businesses in general, they fail because of partners not getting along. You had an instance where you brought on a partner and that was a big positive for you. Were there some skill sets that you saw in that partner that you were like, man, like I absolutely have to have this person, or I'm assuming it was a he
Yep.
had he has these skills that are going to help me take it to another level.
Dude, this guy could be a Navy SEAL if he wanted to be. And I mean, no, all hyperbole aside, like he has grit. He has just that, you know,
Yeah.
he could put his hand on a stove and keep it there tight. When he was my client, he was my least favorite client. Because if I was running late on something, he would call, and if I didn't answer, he'd text, and if I didn't answer, he'd email and chat and, you know, WhatsApp and smoke signal. And then one time, I didn't answer, and he drove to my office, and I was like, this guy is, and he was kind. He just sat there. He's like, oh man, I'll hang out. Like, but he was like so tenacious, and I remember thinking like, wow, I'd love to hire somebody like that. And then years later, he had a great little business that an investor tried to steal his IP, and it caused the whole thing to get shut down.
Yeah.
So he went off and did some work elsewhere, and he was doing okay. You know, he's making 6 figures, but he didn't like the work, and I knew that, and I couldn't afford to match his rate at that time. And so I would call him up, and I could offer him freedom. I was like, bro, you can work from anywhere. You know, you get to see your daughters more often. You know, I'm kind of like the devil on one shoulder whispering in his ear, like, come to the dark side. And when he signed up with me, I basically, I told him, I was like, dude, I've got 90 days, because he told me what he needed to make. And I was like, I've got 90 days to be able to pay you that for us to build this thing into something that works. Where I think partnerships make sense, though, because I've had 3 partnerships, 2 that did not work out, and 1 that has. I believe strongly that there needs to be a very clear line of ownership. So 50-50 partnerships are damn near impossible.
Yeah.
Unless you're like twins and you grew up together from like the womb. But even then, I think it's tough. I think it's really helpful if one person kind of has to make the decision.
Yeah.
And you know, the buck stops there, and you sort of know where that lands. And what's interesting about the situation with me and my partner is we own multiple entities together, and in every entity, that's true, but it's a different person. So I'm involved in entities where he's the lead, and I'm the minority shareholder. And we still work together, just, you know, as well, but it's kind of a separate scenario. You always need to have one person that can just make the call, so you can have like unified leadership, is my soft opinion.
Yeah, no, that's great. I really, really like that. And I also have had multiple partners, multiple failed businesses prior to Dude. And even my, Dude has evolved. We launched Dude in 2017. But prior to that, I had a digital agency, and both of those partners are gone. I bought out the last partner last year, actually, exactly a year ago. Well, this month will be exactly a year ago. So yeah, I definitely can relate to those. And we had the same problems that you were saying, just like no clear ownership, even though technically I actually had more percentage of the company, the roles weren't always well defined, and we had an ownership issue in terms of like taking on solving problems. So anyways, things are much, much better now. And I'm very happy to see that your partnerships have not only survived, but they're thriving and into different businesses too. That's very, very rare. So pat yourself on the back for that.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
So you have achieved a level of scale that many agencies aspire to, And what's really impressive to me, at least, is the number of clients that you're serving with the number of staff that you have. That's really, really interesting too. And you had mentioned that, like in terms of processes, that's kind of like one of the things that has really helped you to get there. So I'd love for you to share some of the process expertise that you've been able to discover on your journey. And hopefully the people that are listening can be like, oh man, I can see how I can take that into my agency.
Yeah. So, a few pieces of advice, and the benefit that I had is I came to the agent. Most people come to agencies from a creative role. They're either part of a larger agency and then niche down to do their own, or in an organization and then rolled up their agency. I came to the agency space by accident from software, and in software you have to map out every single step. A client of mine recently talked to me about the submarine plan, and I guess there's some business consultant out there that says your business needs to run the way a submarine does, like a nuclear submarine.
Okay.
On a nuclear submarine, you've got a manual for like literally everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You turn this knob and press this button, this thing needs to happen, because the stakes are pretty darn high. You can only do what I'm about to say if you're niche, because if you don't have a really clear idea of what your service is, there's no way for you to know the if this then that sequence of things. But the first thing to do is just to go on a whiteboard and draw out the mousetrap. So have you ever played mousetrap with your kids?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't have kids, but yes, okay. I played mousetrap.
You played mousetrap. That's even better, dude.
When I was a kid, yes, I
have this vision of you surrounded by tequila shots in mousetrap now. It's like it's a fun drinking game. But so with mousetrap, it's just like any other dominoes game that you play. Like the foot kicks the ball and the ball goes down the ladder and then it ends up in the thing. Businesses work the exact same way. But right now, for every agency, you're doing that manually. So the sales guy sells the deal. Great. What's funny is most agency owners, when that happens, there's a little bit of stress there because it's like, oh, now I got to get the whole thing ramped up. And
the handoff from sales to ops is very, very challenging.
Dude, I've got that whole thing. So we have something we call the go form. And when my sales guy fills out the go form, it does a bunch of stuff. So it notifies billing to bill. They add the client to QuickBooks, to our merchant processor, to Airtable, and then they bill the client and set up recurring billing. It notifies the onboarding manager that the client is here and that they need to take it over. It notifies the client manager that they have a client in queue. It notifies the specialist team that we have a client in space. And then it sends the client our onboarding portal. And what's funny about that is you don't need like $1 billion software package to do it. What you need to do is draw out your mousetrap, draw out kind of the domino sequence, and then find the solution for each step that's most applicable. What most people try to do is, I'm going to go use HubSpot. Cool. Now I have to build all my automation in HubSpot. Well, the problem is HubSpot might be perfect for like 3 out of 10 of your sequences. But then the 7, you're either crowbarring in or using manual intervention. The thing to do instead is from step A to B, what's the perfect connector here? And then go build it using that connector. And then from B to C, what's the perfect connector here? And so on and so forth. So don't let your business and your automation, your processes be at the mercy of a software tool. Instead, make the process the priority. And that's the hashtag, right? If we were going to tweet this, the process is the priority. And then you're using software to support the process as you go along. It's a little more expensive, but it also, if I didn't have that, I'd be at 30 clients, not 150.
Yeah, I was going to say expensive is relative, So right. Like I would say that by not doing that, the expense is that you're not able to take on several $1 million more worth of clients. So what would you rather do? The whole concept, the concept that you're talking about makes a lot of sense, but the actual implementation by people, they struggle a lot. Like I just see so many agency owners where it's just hard for them to be able to either focus or really break down things into those little steps. So what are some of the things that you do that help you to see things in a sequential, like step-by-step way?
You have to build it piecemeal. Everybody sets out and they're like, I'm going to automate my onboarding. So from start to finish, soup to nuts, they're going to build the whole damn thing. And then they do. And then by step 2, it's broken. And then they abandon everything after step 2. And then they get depressed. What you want to do is start with the smallest piece of automation you can, make it airtight, rock solid. And then once it is, move on. So for instance, if you're sending agreements out to clients, one of the things that took us some time was customizing the DocuSign. Because we have, different rates for different applications, and you have to go in a DocuSign, and it makes it kind of difficult to do that. So what I did is I just created a form with blank fields so that my salespeople could fill out the form, and then it would automatically populate the DocuSign and send it to the client, and that's it. But that little tiny piece of automation, which standalone wasn't worth the amount of time it took me to figure out, that little piece of automation then enabled me to take it on to the next step, to where it's like, all right, now that the DocuSign is signed, I've got all this information in the form, and I can use it again. I can repurpose it and then cascade it down the line. So start just with step one, over engineer step one, make it rock solid. And then the other thing that you're going to notice is building processes around things forces you to systemize your business. For instance, we don't negotiate pricing now because, and it's not even that I'm petulant. It's like, dude, if I give you special pricing, my entire system is built around our pricing model. And that means that I'm gonna have to go through and tweak things every single step of the way. So I just decided to, the price is the price is the price. And we're going to, now what we will negotiate are things like terms, or, the channels that we're marketing or whatever. And if you need a negotiable price, that's fine. But all I'm saying is the system forces you to make decisions that lock you into a more scalable model, because what people don't realize is so much of what they're doing to be nimble means that they're inhibiting their ability to scale.
Right. That's, I mean, again, that is easy in theory, but
Right.
I see a lot of people be like, well, I'm just going to make this little exception because I need the money. Like,
Yeah.
what do you tell yourself to maintain that level of discipline?
I still make the mistake that you just said. But like if I get a,
So,
yeah.
maybe your partner is somebody who like keeps you on track, but like, what is what is some advice that you can give to people that really do struggle with that aspect of standardizing things?
If you build in the standard, you can always break the rule, but you have to have the standard first. So rules can be broken only if the rule exists. But if you don't have the rule, then you don't have the foundation to even make the next step. So if you're struggling, build the rule and give yourself the latitude, the forgivability to say, like, okay, if I really need to bring on a client, or if I need to, break a process, you can, but 80% of the time you won't. And so 80% of the time, the process is going to be way easier than it is now. And the 20%, you're just going to figure out how to contend with it. And we've got trap doors and ways to do that. If I wanted to bring somebody in on a discount, I could, but we don't do it often.
That's great, man. Yeah, I think another way that, at least like I look at launching a new product, or trying to standardize a process for something that we're looking at doing, is like running an experiment, right? So like, this goes back to like 8th grade science. Is you start out with your hypothesis, and then you run experiments, and then you see if your hypothesis is correct. And it's okay, if it doesn't work out, and then you take the information that you've learned, you create a new hypothesis, you run your experiments, and then you see if you get it right that time. So I think just from the way that you look at the problem standpoint, like stop looking at in terms of zero sum, like I failed or this didn't work. Look at it more as you're gaining a body of knowledge. And as that body of knowledge evolves, you're going to be able to make better decisions. So, start, learn, adapt and adjust, run the experiments again, get better little by little. So like, that would be also my advice to people who are listening to this, is just like, if it doesn't work out the first time, don't get down on yourself. Like, go into it thinking, you know what, I'm going to make mistakes, and that's totally cool. And I'm going to learn, and I'm going to adjust. And, that's how we'll create these processes that are going to eventually get us to that next level.
Yeah, that's really brilliant. Dude, that's just good advice in general. Like for especially for marketing. If people aren't comfortable with a little bit of failure, all that happens is they turn it on, and they're like, oh, that didn't work.
I think that's something.
Instead, it needs to be like, well, why didn't that work? Like, what is it that I can learn about?
Yeah, it's something very unique about our culture, that I think it has shifted just in the past maybe 15 years, because we're so used to instant gratification. Like, everything that we have now, we can get 10 times faster than we did, in the early 2000s, right? So you want to travel somewhere, you can book the flight, you can get the hotel, you can book all your tours in 5 minutes, right? And we forget that some things just take time, right? And that's totally okay. It's not bad that, we have to wait, or that we're going to struggle, a little while. Eventually we're going to figure it out. And so I think that in many instances, we just have to remind ourselves that it's okay that some things are just going to take a little bit longer. And then, you don't get down on yourself as bad.
Yeah, I said something to a friend of mine. He asked me about making money. And, he said the same thing that like a kid would say. He's like, how do you make $1 million? And I was like, dude, I've never made $1 million. I've made $1 a million times.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to make. Now there are dudes out there that can go out there and make $1 million, and God bless them. And I want to be one someday. I know how to make $1 a million times, and it's exactly what you just said. Like if you try to skip steps, which I've tried to do my entire life, you know what I mean? Dropped out of college, you know, tried to accelerate things, tried to cheat and not cheat, but cheat the system, you know, like the hack, the
hack.
whatever.
Yeah.
And anytime the hack, I'm always looking for the hacks. Anytime I've ever been successful, it's because I just dug in and I was like, all right, I'm going to grind this out and I'm just going to slug it out. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, that made me money. But you know, then there's the entrepreneurial shiny object disease where, dude, I just did it 2 days ago. I went and dropped way too much money into AMC because I'm on Reddit and I'm like, I think I can do this. And, you know, now I'm down 20%. And I just got to remind myself, like, there's just no such thing as a quick buck.
I had a very close friend of mine, a family friend. I've known him since I was 8 years old. You know, he's like a second father to me. And my first business actually was a soccer magazine that I launched in 2007, and it failed miserably. I lost all my money. And those were like the times when, you know, I had my 99-cent store, you know, veggie meal that I would make, and it would last me a whole week. You know, it cost me like $5 and I could eat off of that for like a week. But anyways, and I was talking to him and I was just basically like, why can't I figure out how to make money? You know, like what is the secret? And I'm like, it always seems like everything you touch is a home run. He's like, honestly, Chris, I don't think I've ever hit a home run in my life. He's like, I just hit a ton of singles every day. All I try and get is just hit a single, hit a single, hit a single. And sometimes I have a double, sometimes I have a triple, but over time, you know, it ends up working out. And then that little conversation that I had for him was just like a massive shift for me. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm just one of those guys that's going to hit 1 million singles, and I'm totally okay with that, you know. And eventually, I'll have Brian money. That was his name. His name's Brian. So, anyways, all right, man. So we're almost out of time. I want to give you an opportunity to you know, plug yourself. So, what is the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Via our website is probably ideal. I've got, you know, a couple of really good folks that help field inquiries. So if you're interested in Google Ads, we do a ton of white label. I'd say, you know, more than half of our business has a white label element. So if you've got an agency and you want somebody to run your Google Ads, I'd love to do that for you. And SOL8.com, sol8.com.
Fantastic. And who would be the perfect person to reach out to you today?
Agency owners for sure, but our biggest footprint right now is in specialty e-commerce. If you've got an e-commerce product, I can't do Me Too stuff. So if you've got a cell phone case, God bless you. Good luck.
Yeah.
But if you've got like a product that actually has unique value proposition and some scale, especially consumable, nobody knows what we know about e-commerce right now. We're the ones that ran the 3X Shopify challenge. Like, so, you know, e-commerce store owners, merchants, especially if you're on Shopify, come look us up. We will crush life for you.
I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And to all of our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in today, and make sure that you return next Thursday and every Thursday for the next episode of Operation Agency Freedom.